Dr.محمد Sabban, please welcome him.
Thank you. Good morning. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished gathering, I would like to start by thanking NCB for inviting me to speak before this very distinguished gathering, and I'm honored to do that. My topic is regarding the energy challenges facing Saudi Arabia. And looking at the present, we see that we are living in Saudi Arabia in the golden age. And I'm saying that basically because of the very high oil prices, around 104, 105 for the Arabian Light crude. And also Saudi Arabia is producing around 10 million barrels per day. So the combination of the two is giving us huge oil revenues over the last 2 years, 2012 and 2013. And of course, we accumulated huge reserves, money reserves abroad, around $700 to $800 billion. So this situation has been reflected in just relaxing and take it easy as far as the different stakeholders. But nobody is clearly looking at the future and how we are going to deal with the future since things will not continue to be the same as it is now. Saudi Arabia is facing two basic challenges. One is domestic challenge with regard to the excessive consumption, domestic energy consumption, and internationally because of what is known now as the energy revolution. And the two are going to affect us very heavily if we are not well prepared for it. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but we need to read the future. We should expect the best, but also plan for the worst. Having said that, I think let me start by the international challenges. We all know that the current prices are not sustainable, oil prices. And they are basically because of the speculative and geopolitical factors. But once you remove these factors, prices will not stay above $100 per barrel. The ongoing revolution in the energy markets are of a permanent change. It is not something that if prices go down, then things will go back to what it is now. These structural changes that is occurring in the oil markets, in the energy markets, have been going on for a long time now. But it was held by the high oil prices and by the improved technologies worldwide. And people are preoccupied by shale oil and shale gas as if they are the only factors that may or may not affect the energy market or the oil market. And this is also not true. There are a lot of changes going on the demand side and on the supply side. Of course, the shale oil and gas is a major change in the oil market, in the energy market. However, it is, as I said, it is not the only change. And if you want to calculate the impact, you need to take everything together on the supply side and on the demand side. Before we go to shale oil, shale gas, and the supply side, let us talk about the demand side. The demand side tells us that there are a lot of structural change going on as far as the impact of energy efficiency measures in the industrialized countries. We see that industrialized countries' demand for oil start to peak in the year 2000 and now gradually start to decline over the years. The CAFE standard in the US is having its effect. By 2007, it was for the car, the ordinary cars, it was 20.1 mile per gallon, and now I mean in 2012, 2013, it is 25.7, and it is expected mile per gallon, and it's expected to be 37.5 in 2016, and by 2025 it will reach 37.8 miles per gallon. So huge improvements in the efficiency of cars, huge improvements in the efficiency of fuels. And that will have its great impacts. And since we all know that demand for oil has been forced to leave all fronts but the transportation front, where there was no alternatives. So the main front for oil and oil products is basically transport sector. But now they are working heavily, consumers, major consumers, on how to reduce the share of oil in the transport sector. So it is not only the efficiency standards, even though it has huge impact, but also because of high oil prices, there has been conservation, aside from the starting of the use of alternatives. And don't take each alternative alone, but take them together. Electric cars, hybrid cars, the biofuel, the use of natural gas. And we all know that the transport sector, public transport sector, in most of the OECD countries are basically run by gas or electricity. And they do not use oil products at all. So the demand for oil in OECD countries, as I said, has been going downward. There is huge downward pressure on the demand for oil in these countries. And by last year, we lost 2 million barrels per day for good because of these changes. Since 2000. 2000 started off the peak, and then it started to go down. Of course, if it was not for China and the emerging economies, it would have been the start of decline of demand for oil worldwide. But because of China, because of India, Brazil, etc., all other emerging countries, demand continues to increase, but at a very, the level of increase is tapering, and we see that the demand for oil is not as high as it used to be in the past. Not only that, but also we see that even China and India and others are not following the same path as the industrialized countries used to do in the past, they start to realize that it is very important to use the best technology. It's very important to be more efficient. It's very important to reduce. They are now talking about reducing dependency on imported oil. China is looking, of course, worldwide to invest here and there for more oil, but they are doing their homework and they are trying to reduce their dependency on imported oil. They allocated $375 billion to be spent over the coming 5 years only to increase energy efficiency. And that is a lot. Of course, this is in addition to what they have been doing so far. So let us not rely that, well, demand will continue to be fine as long as those emerging economies are growing. Of course, they are growing. Their population are huge. Market size is huge. That's all acknowledged. However, they are not going to repeat the same mistakes as other industrialized countries did before. So they will continue to increase their demand for oil, but not at the same level as we are expecting. And many studies have shown that by year 2025, demand for oil will start to peak and then will start to decline. So this is the demand side of the story. For the supply side, 5 years ago, nobody was talking about shale oil and shale gas. It's relatively new, but it is coming with full force, and it is coming to impact the market. Now, the United States, where the beginning of investment in shale oil and shale gas started, are talking about addition of 2 million barrels per day to their current production. They are closely to become the greatest or the highest or the greatest producing country, surpassing Saudi Arabia and Russia by 2017. And they are talking about achieving energy independence by 2020, 2025. And that is coming to be a reality. And we are surprised to see some people are trying to minimize these impacts. If we lose the US market, you are losing as exporters more than 6 million barrels per day for good. Of course, you have other markets, but other markets you are competing with others also. So as far as the shale oil, shale gas, we see that it is a serious danger that is coming. And we see, even though the high prices have helped huge investment coming on stream, but even with lower prices, these investments will not disappear. I remember in the 70s and early 80s, when the North Sea oil came on stream, everybody was saying that if prices go down below $20 per barrel, then North Sea oil will, not only diminish, but will vanish. But this has not happened. Prices went to below $10 per barrel in 1986, and gradually went up to $17. But we saw that North Sea oil continues in the market. They were adding more fields of oil and gas from North Sea. Not only from North Sea, but most of the very expensive areas where major oil and gas discoveries came from at that time. The same will happen here with the shale oil and shale gas. Of course, shale gas is not only impacting the international gas prices. We have seen that while gas prices in Japan, for example, is about $13 per million British unit, energy unit, we see BTU. We see that it is in the United States around $3.5 for million BTU. So there is market differences here. And now United States is thinking of exporting gas. And the cheap gas in the United States will encourage petrochemicals to be more efficient and to be competing with the international petrochemicals, including petrochemicals coming from Saudi Arabia. So if we start to adjust prices domestically in Saudi Arabia without taking into account the gas prices in the United States, definitely we will impact SABIC, we will impact all other petrochemical producers in Saudi Arabia. Beside the shale oil and shale gas, one other point, that shale gas, now the United States is thinking of liquefying shale gas in order to be used in the transport sector. And that, in addition to the biofuel, which is around 1.2 million barrels per day being used in the United States, now if you transfer gas to liquid and use it in the transportation sector, then definitely this will have an additional impact on the market share of oil, not only in the United States, but also definitely it will be liquefied in other countries. Shale oil and shale gas reserves are not limited to the United States. We have seen new countries who were not basically thinking of being producer of energy. China, of course, they are producing energy, but now they have discovered huge reserves of shale oil and shale gas in the north part of China. And they have around 1.2 trillion cubic feet of shale gas. And not only that, but also we see other countries. United States has around 880 trillion cubic feet. Saudi Arabia, by the way, we have our estimates that shows that we have shale gas and shale oil around 660 trillion cubic feet. But for China and Saudi Arabia, there will be a little problem of the using of water. For China, since it is in the north part of China, they have lack of water there, and also it is very hard geography there, and they need a pipeline, etc. So it will take some time to introduce this kind of investment. We have seen also Argentina. They do have a lot of reserves. Beside Argentina, we see United Kingdom, some other European countries, Brazil, etc. You name it. There are a huge number of countries who have huge reserves of shale oil and shale gas. The main driver for investing in shale oil and shale gas, of course, is the improvement of the technology, horizontal drilling, and also improving of the hydraulic fracturing. Do I need to wait here, not to walk around? And hydraulic fracturing. But now there is a new technology that's been put into test, is what is called the the dry fracturing or the dry fracking. So you don't need to use water in order to produce or to get into the solid rocks where you will get out the shale oil and shale gas. So if this is being proven gradually, many countries, including Saudi Arabia, will invest in producing shale oil and shale gas, especially from the areas where it is mostly located, the the western part of Saudi Arabia, along the Red Sea. Having said that, I think the impact of shale oil and shale gas is true, is a reality. We should not minimize these impacts, and it will even be stronger impact in the coming years. And nobody should, we have seen some articles in the Saudi local papers where they say, don't worry, this is something that will not materialize, environmental problems, etc., etc. But this is not the case. And it should not be a surprise for us that it will come on stream in huge amount. Secondly, as far as the supply side, we have seen that many OPEC countries have started to increase their production capacities. We have seen, of course, even non-OPEC countries, some new producers entering the markets. Oil reserves, just a few years ago, we were talking about the peak oil, that oil reserves will be depleting very soon, etc., etc. Now we have discovered that it is, even though we have produced billions of barrels during the last 80 years or so, we have discovered that the international oil reserves is around 1.6 trillion barrels. It's a huge number. So the issue of scarcity is not with us anymore. And those who are talking about, well, let us keep our oil underground, we should utilize it better, it will be depleted very soon. This is not the case. Even Saudi Arabia, we have huge reserves under the current technology. So I think the thing that we need to look at is that there will be more oil coming on stream. Iraq, for example, even though they have some security problems these days, but by year 2017, as they are planning, their production capacity will increase to be around 12 million barrels per day. Maybe this is a little bit optimistic, but I think let us put it 2020, not 2017, since they have some problems with some international oil companies and also with the Kurds area. Nigeria, they are increasing their production capacity. Kuwait, other non-OPEC countries. So the addition to the existing production capacity will be in the range of 10 to 15 million barrels per day. If you take all these things, all the changes on the supply side and the demand side together, you will see the picture that gradually there will be downward pressure on oil prices. And OPEC will struggle to maintain prices at a certain level by reducing their production. And then the scenarios of the 70s and the 80s, where some OPEC member countries were cheating, were giving lower prices, etc., may reappear again in the wake of weak market and weak demand in the coming years. The only difference between different scenarios is when, not if this is going to happen, whether it is going to happen 2020 or 2025 or later. But they are all determined that this is a new cycle that will come, and you need, as oil producer, to be well prepared for it. And here I'm talking up to the business community. I mean, your role is very huge. Governments cannot continue to expend more and more in order to, perform certain projects. But it is your role, your leading role, to prove that this is not only that you love your country, but also you are forceful in trying to achieve a certain level of economic diversification that will get us far away from the heavy reliance we have on the oil revenues. So this is for the international challenges. Saudi Arabia is facing another challenges. Sorry to take, another 5 or 10 minutes. Is the excessive increases in the domestic consumption of oil. There are many factors that affected this level of increase. We are basically talking about consuming around 4 million barrels equivalent of oil per day. This is a huge, huge amount. And not only that, but Saudi Arabia is facing a serious problem because most of the domestic consumption is basically a consumption of crude oil and crude products, oil products. And that means that whatever you consume, you cannot export. So you are losing. The opportunity cost here is very, very high. And at the time that you can sell your barrel of oil at a price of 105, 106, you are selling it in the local market around $5 to $11 per barrel. So you are losing this amount. And if we take into consideration that the annual growth rate of the domestic energy consumption is around 7 to 8%, then we are going to face a serious problem. But how this serious problem came from? On the demand side, of course, you have population growth. We have urbanization going into different areas. You have fuel prices being subsidized. We are among the lowest fuel prices in the world. We actually do not have public transportation, efficient and complete public transportation, etc. on the demand side. Of course, on the supply side, Saudi Arabia did not diversify its energy sources. Other than oil and gas, basically, we do not have alternatives. We do not have renewables. Now we started to think of going renewables. And we have the King Abdullah city for nuclear and renewable energy. This is something new. They have started to develop their strategy, but still, they are going very, very slow. And unfortunately, they are putting as a priority the nuclear energy. If I were there, I would put the solar energy as a priority, and then probably, if we need, then we can get to nuclear, not to jump to the nuclear because of the different reasons that well known, including that we lack the domestic resources as far as the experts, etc. So we need to build our domestic capacity before getting into nuclear. But gladly, we have seen that there are new discoveries of natural gas. And we have all listened to Aramco when they said that we are going to start by the end of this year the Median field, where it has a lot of gas, and also Liba in north of Tabuk, etc. And even in the empty quarter, there are new discoveries. And this will get our reserve of natural gas up from 288 trillion cubic feet to around 300 trillion cubic feet, aside from unconventional gas. And this is a huge amount, and that will gradually ease up the demand for gas to be used in the power generation sector, in the desalination sector, and aside or plus the petrochemical, satisfying the needs of the petrochemical industries. But you need to start tackling the issues that makes our consumption, energy consumption domestically, very high. We lack standards. We don't see that we have energy efficiency standards, whether in the buildings, in the cars. Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, became a dumping place for the unused cars in different places because of the environmental and other regulations. So we need to start on this regulation. You need to start on how to rationalize the consumption of energy, of course, without affecting industry, without affecting the needs of petrochemicals, etc. So I think these challenges are very huge. We need to tackle them on domestic level. But if you take if we don't do, business as usual is not an option. Because if we continue at 8% annual increase in domestic energy, and given that we are already 4 million barrels of oil equivalent per day, our domestic consumption, then definitely within 10, 15 years, we may end up not exporting 1 barrel. Of course, some are saying, well, we can at any time increase our production capacity. That's true. But we don't want to reach to that point. We need to do whatever is the best allocation of resources for Saudi Arabia. So I think I want to conclude. I'm sorry I took a little bit long. I want to conclude by saying that these challenges are real. We need to plan for the worst. Even we should also expect the best. But you cannot just relax and say, well, oil prices are very nice now, and this will continue forever. This is not the case. The changes are domestically and internationally coming into force, and we need to be well prepared in order to safeguard the coming future generation. Thank you very much.
شكرا.